All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time we're looking into paidonlinewritingjobs.com.
Yeah, yes.
And we've got, the kind of the usual mix of stuff, marketing stuff right from the website,
Right.
and then also some, user reviews,
Mm.
some comparisons with other platforms.
Mm.
So, it'll be interesting to see, does paidonlinewritingjobs.com deliver on, all the promises?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of buzz around these online writing gigs these days. And I
Yeah.
think it's understandable,
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to get paid to write from home?
Right, exactly.
But I think it's important to be critical
Yeah.
about these platforms. Are they providing value or are they just preying on people's desire for a quick buck?
Yeah, that's what we're here to find out.
Exactly.
So, let's just dive right into paidonlinewritingjobs.com.
Okay.
They're not shy about, kind of making some big promises
Hmm.
right on their website. I mean, they're saying things like thousands of writing jobs,
Hmm.
um, start work immediately, no experience necessary. I mean, they even go so far as to say things like, uh, get paid to write articles and stories,
Yeah.
proofread books and movie scripts, write reviews of websites.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
they really make it sound like they've got something for everybody.
Well, it certainly sounds appealing. I mean, they've got a wide range of stuff, but,
Mhm.
anyone can say anything on their website. I
Yeah.
mean, the question is, do they deliver? And at what cost?
That's a great point. So they do mention that there's a $27 fee to get started,
Yeah, okay.
which, at first glance doesn't seem that bad.
Right.
But some of our sources have found that there are these additional, they call them upsells,
Oh, right.
which are basically, just attempts to get you to buy more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And those can add up to as much as $191.
Wow.
So, I mean, that brings the total cost to $218.
Yeah, that's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, what else aren't they being upfront about?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then, speaking of, what you get for your money, some of these reviews are saying that the jobs that paidonlinewritingjobs.com advertises, they often just redirect you to, free platforms
So, really?
like Upwork and Freelancer.
Hmm.
So it's like, what are people actually paying for?
Yeah, I mean, if they're just sending you to these other platforms that you can access for free, it makes you wonder, what's the point? What are they offering that's unique?
Exactly.
And then, I've also heard that their training materials are very generic.
Yeah.
Stuff that you can find, for free online.
Right. Yeah. So we're already starting to see some red flags here,
Yeah.
some questionable value for your money. What are you thinking so far? Are you concerned?
Let's just say I'm a little skeptical. It's not unusual for platforms like this to try to lure people in with promises of easy money.
Right.
But the reality is, freelance writing, it's not always that simple.
Right. Yeah. And for anyone listening, if you're, feeling a little discouraged right now, don't worry. We've got some other platforms we're going to be talking about that might be worth a look.
Absolutely. Yeah.
These are platforms that, are a bit more transparent.
Right.
They offer a little bit more value, so we'll get into those next.
Sounds good.
All right. So it sounds like paidonlinewritingjobs.com might not be all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah, I'd say proceed with caution on that one.
Yeah. But the good news is there are other options out there for, aspiring freelance writers.
Right.
So let's talk about some of the platforms that our sources highlighted as, potentially better alternatives,
Okay.
specifically Upwork, Fiverr, and ProBlogger. So what makes these platforms different from, what we've seen so far?
Well, these platforms are a lot more established,
Okay.
and they tend to be more transparent. Let's start with Upwork. Upwork is kind of like the big dog in the freelance world. It's a huge online marketplace
Mhm.
where, freelancers from all over can connect with clients. It's free to join,
Yeah.
and they only take a cut of your earnings when you actually complete a job. Their fees range from like 5% to 20%, depending on how much you bill with a particular client.
Okay. So no upfront costs,
Yeah.
which is, already a good sign.
Right.
And the fees seem reasonable, especially if you're, potentially finding a lot of work through the platform.
Exactly.
So let's move on to Fiverr. Now, Fiverr's always kind of struck me as a bit, I don't know, gimmicky
Yeah.
with the whole gig thing.
Right.
I mean, is it really a serious option for, writers who are, trying to build a career?
Fiverr's interesting. It's also free to join.
Okay.
And they take a 20% commission on, all your transactions. The gig system can be a little bit limiting, but it also, kind of forces you to specialize a bit. Okay.
So instead of bidding on projects, you're creating these prepackaged offers
Right.
with, specific deliverables and pricing. So it's more about, showcasing your unique skills.
Got it. So it's less about competing on price and more about, highlighting what makes you special.
Right, exactly.
But isn't that 20% commission a bit steep, especially compared to, Upwork's sliding scale?
Yeah, it can be, especially for, bigger projects, but Fiverr can be a good place to, just get started, build up your portfolio, try out different services. And then once you've, built a reputation and a client base, you can always adjust your pricing.
That makes sense. Okay, so what about ProBlogger? What's the deal with that one?
So ProBlogger is a little different. It's a job board that's specifically for, blogging. It's free for freelancers to use, and the employers are the ones who pay to post the listings.
They focus more on quality than quantity, so you're more likely to find, established companies who are looking for, experienced bloggers who can produce really high quality content.
So if someone's, brand new to blogging, what are some of the skills that they would need to really stand out on a platform like ProBlogger?
Well, SEO is really important. That's basically, making sure that your writing is optimized for search engines like Google. You also need to be able to write, really engaging content that's informative and targeted to a specific audience. And of course, it always helps to have, a portfolio of published work.
So it sounds like, we've got Upwork, which is kind of like the everything store.
Right.
We've got Fiverr, where you can, really niche down and showcase your special skills.
Mm-hmm.
And then ProBlogger, which is kind of the high-end boutique for, serious bloggers.
Exactly.
So we're starting to get a much clearer picture of, what the freelance writing landscape looked like.
Yeah.
But, even with these seemingly more transparent platforms, it's still, the Wild West out there to some degree. So how can our listener be sure that they're, making the right choice?
Well, there's always going to be some element of risk when you're dealing with, online platforms.
Right.
But, it's really about being informed and not just taking everything at face value. Remember those trust scores that we saw from Scam Detector and Scam Advisor?
Oh, yeah. Those were kind of all over the place, weren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, Scam Detector gave paidonlinewritingjobs.com a really low score.
Right.
But then Scam Advisor said it was relatively safe.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, how are we supposed to make sense of that?
Well, those scores, they're just one piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
It's important to dig a little deeper, read user reviews, compare what you find with other platforms.
Yeah.
It's like getting a second opinion from a doctor.
Yeah. You don't just go with the first thing you hear. You want to get more information.
Right, exactly. It's about being proactive and doing your research. Don't just rely on, what a website tells you or what one trust score says. Look for patterns in the feedback. Pay attention to red flags and just trust your gut.
Okay, so we've got these, alternative platforms, and we've got some tools for, evaluating their trustworthiness.
Right.
But there's another piece to this puzzle that I think we need to address.
Okay.
And that's, the allure of easy money online.
Yeah.
It's so tempting to believe these promises of, quick riches. But how can our listener develop, a more skeptical mindset?
That's a great question, and it's something we should definitely dive into. It's all about cultivating a mindset that will help you navigate this world safely and avoid those tempting but often misleading shortcuts.
So, we've looked at the platforms, we talked about doing your homework, but, how do you develop that gut feeling that helps you spot a scam?
Yeah.
Like right away?
You got to be skeptical. I mean, especially with all these online money-making schemes.
Yeah.
These promises of overnight success, it's usually just hype.
Right.
It's designed to, get you to click. It preys on that desire for a quick fix.
Yeah, it's like those weight loss ads.
Yeah.
Lose 10 pounds in a week just by drinking this smoothie.
Right, exactly.
Sounds great, but,
Right.
Deep down, it's probably not going to work.
Yeah, and when it comes to freelance writing, it's a skill. It takes time.
Yeah.
There's no magic button.
Right. So it's more like a marathon than a sprint.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's important to, keep learning.
Yeah.
Things are always changing. The online world, the freelance writing landscape. You got to stay ahead of the curve.
Right.
Embrace the new technologies, adapt to the trends, and never stop, improving your craft.
Yeah, it's like anything else you want to be good at, right?
Yeah.
You got to put in the time.
Exactly. And one of the best ways to learn is to, connect with other writers.
Yeah.
Join communities, go to workshops, talk to people.
Right.
Share your experiences, your challenges, your insights. It's really valuable.
It's like having a support system,
Yeah,
people who get it.
exactly. Yeah.
So we've talked about being skeptical, continuous learning, finding your people. Is there anything else, that our listener can do to navigate all this safely and successfully?
Here's a question to think about. How can you become a more discerning consumer of information? Because there's just so much out there, especially online. Learning to filter through all that noise,
Yeah.
to find those reliable sources, it's crucial.
It's like you got to develop a BS detector,
Exactly.
just a sixth sense for what's real and what's not.
Right. You got to think critically, consider the source, look for evidence, be wary of those, emotionally charged headlines, the sensationalized claims.
Right. So basically approach everything with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Yeah.
Never stop learning.
Yeah.
And be really careful about where you get your information from.
Exactly.
All right. So we've covered a lot today.
Yeah, we have.
We started with that deep dive into paidonlinewritingjobs.com.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of opened up this whole discussion about, the world of freelance writing.
Right.
We looked at some other platforms.
Yeah,
We talked about, doing your homework, being critical. And hopefully, we've given our listeners some tools to approach this, with confidence.
Absolutely.
So it's been great chatting with you about all this.
Likewise.
And to our listener, keep learning, keep asking questions. Don't give up on those writing goals.
Yeah, good advice.
And remember, even though it's called freelance writing, you're not alone.
Right.
Find your people, build your network, and just keep writing.
Keep those words flowing.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.